Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday Checkdown. I'm Joe Carlton, and I'm here with Rick Brusuelas. Tonight, class is in session. Our guest is one of the very best NFL and college football analysts, not to mention one of the best voices in the space. You know him from all of the rookie big board videos. We introduce the great John Laub. John's
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey,
Hello,
John. Now,
John's. You want me to keep
Go
going
for
with
it,
that? John's deep knowledge of college players is perhaps unmatched, and he shares that knowledge with such enthusiasm that it makes him a highly sought guest on top fantasy podcasts. We are honored he is here with us this evening. I know I am looking forward to all of the valuable in-depth nuggets that he is going to be dropping about this year's incoming draft class. John, welcome to the Thursday Checkdown. How are you tonight, man?
I'm great, and thank you for inviting me, man. I'm so excited for this. You gave me a lot of great outline questions I've been thinking about for the last 48 hours, so I appreciate that as a guest. Sometimes when people give you a lot of questions, it helps you get you motivated. You know, it's been a long day. I'm a teacher, but I'm excited. This is the best time of the year. Everything I've done for the last 6 months comes down to the next 2 months. So I really do get excited for this time of the year.
well, and we are excited. And Joe said we're honored to have you here. We were trying to pump ourselves up to be able to get at least halfway up to your energy level. But it's what makes you and makes, the audience is really attract to you. We are going to talk draft, obviously, but before we get there, I think it'd be great for the audience to get a little bit more information on yourself, know a little bit more about John. So why don't you share a little bit about your background, where you live, your family. Let us know a little bit about you.
Oh, thank you. If I kind of alluded to it, I am a high school history teacher, 22 years full time. This is 20 years at the current school that I am at. I absolutely love teaching, mostly juniors and sophomores. I get some seniors sprinkled in every once in a while, but mostly juniors and sophomores. And football's been my passion, I kind of jokingly, since 1977. You notice, just ironically, I have a Denver hoodie on. And, before 1977, the Broncos weren't a very good organization in the NFL. And if any of those who are of a certain age, you'll remember the Orange Crush defense. And it really did make national headlines at the time. So as a little kid, I think I must have been 11 or 12, sitting in Connecticut. I wasn't in New Haven. I teach in New Haven, Connecticut, if anyone doesn't know. I just lived in Connecticut my whole life. And the Orange Crush started to be on Time Magazine, New York Times, like Pro Football Monthly, all of these things. They really started getting national headlines. And as a little kid, I love the name. I don't know why, but like the Orange Crush when you're 12 years old seemed like the coolest thing ever. And then I remember my mom or dad found me Orange Crush soda. I don't even know if they make it anymore, but there used to be a soda, Orange Crush, and I was drinking a 6-pack, over a period of days of Orange Crush, and I just always stayed a Bronco fan. But obviously football is the passion. Fantasy football is now the passion, but it stayed with me for my whole life.
And what led you to the specialization around college draft and looking, and not just the seniors or the juniors that are coming out in the rookie drafts, but even Devy type analysis? I know you're really strong at the Devy world as well.
So part of my summer research, the nice thing about being a teacher, you can choose to work in the summer. Now, most of my career I don't mind teaching summer school, obviously with the family. There's always extra funds are good for the family, for vacation, stuff like that. But even if I'm teaching, it's only 3 or 4 hours a day. So it does give me a lot of time to break down film. And I noticed about 15 years ago, when this is before I got married, I would just sit around and watch tape. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm watching all this tape. I love this game. And it seems kind of silly now. This is my 12th year doing profiles, publishing them, and printing my information. And I said, well, if I'm doing all this, why don't I just put it out in the marketplace? And I was Emil Cadleck and Bob Harris at footballdiehards.com were kind enough at the time to be willing to print my profiles. And I kept liking it. I mean, and at the time, it even seems like, I feel like it's the dark ages. I didn't feel like there were a lot of people doing fantasy analysis of rookies. There were some. I'm not saying that there weren't any, but it was limited. And compared to now, I mean, it's so blown up. And I said, I have a different outlook sometimes on rookies, and I didn't know if it was by luck or design or whatever. And I disagreed with the national media at times. Hey, I've been wrong plenty of times, but there were also times I was right as a player. I remember one specifically is LaShawn McCoy. I had seen LaShawn McCoy living in the Northeast. If you don't remember, he played at Pittsburgh.
Sure.
And holy crap, is LaShawn McCoy great. I think he went in the second round, if my memory serves me, with the Eagles at the time. And I'm like, why does the NFL not love LaShawn McCoy? Like, I just didn't get it, if that makes any sense. And I said, you know what? There's enough of these players over my lifetime who I felt that I was ahead of the curve, or I liked that for whatever reason fell underneath the radar. And I said, let me publish it. And then it became, excuse me, it became a passion. Once I got the taste online, excuse me, everyone. Once I got the taste online for writing and publishing and examining my results, the biggest thing, I never examine immediately after the first year. I like to wait 2 years. I try to give any prospect 2 years before I can really digest what he did. So by year 3 and 4, I was able to go backwards and say, okay, what did I get wrong? What did I like? What did I see? Why did this player fail so bad? I don't know if you remember a player named Kenneth Davis out of Louisiana Tech.
Definitely do.
We love Kenneth Davis. Then he landed in a golden moment with Baltimore, right? The run game, Harbaugh. It looked like a match. And then he didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say to myself, what did I do wrong? What did I not see? Now, there are things we can't control, right?
Sure.
I'm not in the locker room. I'm not on the football field. But from my perspective, what did I get wrong? And I've been able to refine and get better over the years.
And we're all learning, and hopefully learning from the decisions that don't work out as well as those that do. I know we're just chomping at the bit to start talking about some of the rookies, but first of all, teachers, high school teachers especially, angels on earth, and thank you very much for that sort of work. Taking and preparing our kids for the future is such an important job. I'm curious though, do any of the kids in your class, do they join fantasy football leagues? Do they ask you questions about fantasy football?
So Rick, this is an interesting question. And I actually think this is kind of good for me. You're not going to believe it. I teach in an art school. And honestly, by being in such a different environment with so many artists, think differently. If anyone's ever been around artists, musicians, friends, painters, and you're really close with them, you do learn how they look at the world and look at life. So I'll say this. It is really my privilege to work with kids who are so different and talented. Also, Rick, it kind of gives me a mental break. Like, I have my job. I have different kids with different perspectives. I will say maybe 5% of the kids like football. It's a very low number. And honestly, now there are women who like football. We know that as fantasy fans. But 70% of my school are women. So it puts me in a different cultural environment, which actually enlightens me in many different ways, because it's interesting. I don't say this because no one asked me the question. I do think there's an artistry to the athlete. And I know it can be subjective, and that's why I like data analysis. But I always joke, I think the beauty of watching Eric Dickerson compared to Barry Sanders is like a French impressionist and Picasso. Like, they're that incredibly different. Both of them are beautiful running backs, but the artistry and the symmetry of their game was so different. And the kids have really showed me that over the years when you listen to them. So I will say, to answer your question, no, there's not very many. Now, they kind of learn I do some videos. Like, it's kind of like, oh, do you know Mr. Laub has a YouTube? And like, they'll say things, oh, I saw your YouTube last night. But it's more kind of like a joke, just talking to their, oh, I want to see what my teacher does.
Well, that's cool. And again, I've watched you for years. And so, and I've always felt a little jealous, I guess, or envious of the kids that get to be your students. I mean, if you're giving anywhere this level of energy and excitement to the classes you teach, as you do when you share information about fantasy football, they're in for, you're a special teacher, and they're in for a treat. So, and like I said, we're here to talk fantasy football, and I know that you helped us out a lot. So why don't I go ahead and pass this over to Joe, and he can start leading into that discussion.
Right. We're on to the rookie goodness. Let's do it. So look, I'll start right at the top. We're going to start right at the top. A lot of us are excited about Ashton Jeanty. Are there any other players in this draft in the top tier, or is Jeanty standing alone in tier 1? And which players do you have in the second tier as well?
Great question. He is in a tier by himself, but I'll say this. The tier 2, in my book, is closer than people are giving it credit for. I'm not unconvinced that a Marion Hampton, Trevion Henderson, or Caleb Johnson won't outperform Ashton Jeanty. Now, we know landing spot, schemes, and systems mean everything in the long run for the back. And I was just telling someone, look at the difference between Saquon Barkley with the New York Giants, which has just become so sad living in the Northeast, an inept organization over the last 5 years. And look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did for that young man, and look at what he led them to. So we know systems matter. Where do these young men land is going to ultimately define their fantasy and NFL careers. But I don't think some people I don't know if you can see. Some people think it's this different between Jeanty and a Marion Hampton. I'm not that convinced as those, because size and speed still matter. And anyone who's followed me over the years, G5, the reality is the competition on the defensive side of the ball is not as fierce as in the Power 4. I'm sorry. And I love the Mountain West, and I love college football. Rick was talking about it. But the reality is most of the linebackers in the Mountain West and the safeties are not going to the NFL level. Why do I say that? When you have a 17-game schedule, and you're playing the best of the best on defense, that's a different animal. I know he was good at Oregon. I know the tape is good when Jeanty played top-level P4 programs. The reality is that that's like 2 games out of 12.
Instead of week after week. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, that week after week grind, Rick. And no one can tell me for sure that Jeanty, if he has to play the Washington Commanders, the Eagles, and the Giants, I'm pretending he's on the Cowboys, and then he has to go to Baltimore, and then he's playing the Jets, then he flies to the Rams, that he can handle that physical pound. Do I think he can? Yes. Is there a universe where that takes its toll? Absolutely. That's one. And the reality is SEC running backs, and I just said this, I got to do this one day. What are the reality of SEC running backs? How impactful are they actually over the last 25 years in the NFL? Because my anecdotal evidence says they're really good, right? Now, a couple things are happening. One, the SEC recruits better athletes.
Sure.
Two, the SEC has better offensive lines and better coaches. So I get that. But the reality is the practices, the training camp, and the weekly grind of playing in the SEC prepares your body mentally, physically to compete at that higher level. Now, I happen to think Genty's an outlier. I do. I think he's better than any other back in this class. But I do have in the back of the mind, at the end of the day, he hasn't played 17 games against SEC competition. He didn't go to Alabama, LSU, Mississippi, Arkansas, right? That's a grind, folks. That is a grind. There's in the back of him, maybe it's only a 10% outcome, but maybe that 10% happens. I do have him number one. I think he's a top 10 pick. I have no problem with that, but I kind of think of a range of outcomes, if that makes sense, right? High end, he's an all-pro. 2,000 yards from scrimmage with, low end, he's 800-yard back with 7 touchdowns. Like that's the range of outcomes that he could be. And he is an outlier, but I can't just discount the G5 competition and say, oh yeah, he's a no-brainer.
And I just can't help but think that the draft, the pre-draft trade offers are slightly dropping after hearing that. Okay.
Hey, let me just, would you want a Marion Hampton in Minnesota or Ashton Genty in the Raiders?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question, now maybe I'm just kind of brainstorming, but man, you give me a Marion Hampton with O'Donnell, right? O'Connell, the coach, on that Vikings team with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. I don't know. That's a much different animal.
And the other question would be if, and everyone's been talking about this related to a running back draft or running back deep draft. So I guess one of the questions to us fantasy players is, well, do you go ahead and use or trade up for, the Genty or Hampton or Trevian Henderson? Or do you think, well, gee, maybe I should be looking at either the wide receivers where it's not a deep draft for wide receivers or as deep as it was last year? Or do we look at even tight end? I guess it creates more questions than it does a very simple, I'm going to go running back heavy the whole draft.
Well, Rick, I've thought about this a lot now. So the second group, it's Hampton, Henderson, and Caleb Johnson. Those are the 3 in the next tier.
Okay.
I thought about this a lot, Rick. The value is going to be in the second, third, and fourth round of Devy drafts for the running back position.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get my hands on Toria McMillan or Marion Hampton, I'm probably going to go McMillan because I will literally take a triple dip at running back or maybe throw a tight end in there in rounds 2, 3, and 4, depending on value. If I can get 3 running backs in my top 15, I am therefore rolling the dice that one of them is going to be a star. And I get Toria McMillan on top of it. So all I have to do is hit on one of 3.
Exactly.
Right.
And because this class, and I'm trying not to be hyperbolic, this class is the best I've done in my 12 years. It's phenomenal. Everything you want is here. Everything. And I've looked at 35 backs. So depending on now, some of them I don't think are real NFL players. But I have 22 solid NFL impactful running backs. I just got to hit on one. And that is very possible in this draft. Beyond possible. Now, obviously, if you're talking Ashton Genty, let's say you're in a super flex and Genty drops and McMillan went. Well, if it's Ashton Genty or Luther Burden, I'm going Ashton Genty.
Easy.
Right. But or even a Mecca Buka, who people, and I like him. We'll talk about him. But I think you have to I want out of 5 picks, and my dynasty leagues are 5 or 6 picks. So depending on what you are, I would like to leave my first 5 picks with 3 running backs, but I'm okay with waiting to dip later in. The X factor, we'll talk about this later, is the tight end. You've got to find the value at the tight end spot. And we'll talk about that later.
And there's 2.
There's 2 real nice, juicy ones. Let's leave it at that.
You got it. Well, in fact, Joe, why don't you get us into the quarterbacks?
Okay. So can you give us the top-ranked quarterbacks, and are there any that you consider as the top 12 as an NFL quarterback?
Right now, if you ask me to say, would any of these 12 make top 12 fantasy quarterbacks, I would bet against it. Does not mean that it won't happen, but I would bet against it. Some people have asked me offline, and these are friends who follow me, and I mean fantasy football / dynasty. It's not like we go out and coffee shop on the weekends. They're all on the internet, right? Cam Ward, if he was in this year's draft, you notice he's my number 1 in this draft. I would have him at number 6. I would have him at number 6 in last year's draft. I would have him below J.J. McCarthy. Hello, Wendy. And I would have him ahead of Michael Penix. So that, to me, shows you where he stands. And I don't know if Penix will ever be a top 12 NFL quarterback. And McCarthy, that's yet to be seen. Hey, he's in a good spot, but we haven't seen anything on the actual field. So
will he even be ready next at the start of the season for next season? We're not even sure on that.
We're not sure. I know there's been some shaky news about that. So, I mean, I would say, and I hate to say, because I want the young men to be successful because we love the game, right? The better quarterback play, the better overall game it is. But if I had to put a wager on, I would not think one of these top 5 would be a top 12 fantasy producer.
And also then I'm guessing you could look at next year's draft and say, gee, would it be better off, going after the running back where I have a better chance of hitting something that's going to hit big, and maybe hold off until next year for some of the quarterbacks in that draft?
So just quickly, because I've been starting to do CFF rankings, and obviously CFNF and Debbie are kind of interrelated, and I begin to separate the CFF from Debbie. The running back class is so bad next year, folks. You better get 3 running backs this year. I mean, right now for college fantasy football, the running back class looks bad. Now, does not mean that a guy, look at Caleb Johnson. He was not on a Debbie radar anywhere last year. And now I have him as my 3rd rated running back in the draft. 4th. So we know 1 or 2 players pop. That always happens. But if you're asking me right now, it's kind of like why I took Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy last year in Debbie drafts. I was very worried that this class was not very good. So what did I need to do? I needed to get a quarterback in last year's class. Now, I had Penix on 2 teams because I ended up with Kirk Cousins, right? So it made sense in the 2nd round to grab Penix. If you play Dynasty, you know the value of backups and first-round picks and all that at the position. I don't know yet if Penix is going to come through, but I like having the asset on my roster right now. And I knew this class, I wasn't sitting there going, oh my God, I can't wait to get one of these quarterbacks next year, especially from a fantasy perspective.
John, with all that being said, are any of them considered? Would you consider any of them in the first round of a Superflex rookie draft?
I would. Cam Ward and Shador. Now, I'm a Jackson Dart guy. I don't think you're going to have to draft them in the first round.
Right.
Let's be clear. I got a lot of Jalen Hurts. I have a lot of Sam Howell. I have a lot of Bo Nix because the value was there. Just because I like a guy I had Bo Nix number 4 last year. Doesn't mean I'm going to go out and draft him in the first round.
Right.
So I would love to get Jackson Dart in round 3 of a dynasty draft if it happened to fall for me. I think the Raiders or the Jets are going to pull the trigger. They have to. Their quarterback position's a disaster. So if I'm team 10 in the 3rd round and Jackson Dart is sitting there, I'm going to take him. I personally don't think I would. Cam Ward to me is like the 3rd in a super flex league. But I understand if you're desperate, why you might take Cam Ward in the top 2, because we've all been there on a bad super flex dynasty team, right? You're like, oh my God. So I understand why, but I actually don't think he should come off the board until pick 3. Now, I'm not a Shedeur Sanders. I know people love Shedeur Sanders. I'll tell you this. I won't have one Shedeur Sanders because he's going to be too expensive for my taste. That just doesn't mean I don't like him. Doesn't mean I don't think he should be drafted. Just means I'm not paying a 4th or 5th pick in the overall draft to get Shedeur Sanders.
And just to follow up on that, if you're in a super flex and you have your QB1 set, but your QB2 is either non-existent or it's not pretty good, would you draft a Sanders or Ward or Dart even, or would you try to trade for I don't know,
Derek
Smith or someone like that you think is going to start?
I'd rather trade for like I think one guy I'm trying to get. Why can't Sam Darnold?
Yeah,
I would rather have Sam Darnold.
I like this. Yep,
because I might be wrong. I think the perception, just from my anecdotal, because I'm in the draft mode. I'm not like in fantasy ranking. I'm in draft mode. But from what I pick up on Twitter and X and Blue Sky and Facebook, people are down on Sam Darnold. Hey, if I can have Sam Darnold as my second quarterback, where I get he was bad at the end. I get it. I watched every one of those games. I watched them just like everyone else did. But guess what? 3 bad games means it's a buy-in opportunity.
Exactly.
Sam Darnold, is he crazy young still? 24, 25? He literally came in the league at like 21. Like, he's so young. Why would I not take a shot? What if we're all wrong? That's within the realm of outcome.
And his first organization was the Jets.
Yeah, disaster. It was a complete disaster organization. What if we're hearing rumors, and I'm just spitballing. What if McVay moves on from Matt Stafford?
I love this. I was actually just going to say this.
Darnold. You know what happens to his fantasy value?
The Rams is a great spot. Great spot for him.
Oh my God, would that be perfect for Sam Darnold? So that's how I look. I'm trying to put out feelers for Sam Darnold. Most of my dynasty leagues, people aren't trading players yet. They're looking for picks or rookies or something. But I would like to grab Sam Darnold. Yeah,
picks don't get injured, so they, as we get closer and closer to the draft, boom, they keep going up.
Yep. All right, so let's get into this.
Oh, sorry, Darnold is 28, so I apologize. So he's been in the league a lot. I'm old. My memory, but still 28 for a quarterback.
28 is still,
and he's still
2-3 years, you're good.
He's still a former #1 pick too, right? Yeah. So it's definitely worth rolling the dice on. He could land in a good spot. It definitely shoots up his value, because I think a lot of the people's arguments about being down on him is he was kind of a product of Minnesota's offense. So if he lands in a similar spot, where he has Puka Nacua and a great offensive coach, then definitely on him. All right, so John, why don't you get in? Let's talk about this running back class. We'll go through the rankings. You can give us the rankings, and then we can go through each player one at a time if you want, or however you want to do it. But,
so we already teased Ashton Genty is in a tier by himself, but it's close. I love Hampton. I am all in on Hampton. I think he's going to have a very nice NFL career. The scouts at the NFL level are going to like Hampton more than most people on Twitter, I think. He's big, he's strong, he's explosive, he blocks, he catches. I mean, he's got the package. 226. Oh, sorry, I'm at the wrong screen right now. I have to flip to my running back screen. Want to make sure I get the stats right all the time. He's 220. Come on, man. I mean, maybe I'm a weirdo. I like my backs big and strong and powerful, and that's what Hampton is. Trevion Henderson is the X factor. He has a massive range of outcomes. He could be Tony Pollard, right? He could be LaShawn McCoy. He could be uber explosive with lots of home runs, or he could just be nice, not great. I like Trevion Henderson. Guys, if you want to watch good film, watch Trevion Henderson pass block. Holy shit, is this man good? Excuse my language. He stonewalls people. And why is that important? Coaches love
Keeps
that.
him on the field.
Keeps him on the field 100%.
And here's the thing. You can get into a 3-minute drill at your 30, and you can keep Trevion Henderson in that drill until you score a touchdown. Because he can block, he can catch, and if you want to run a draw at the 12-yard line, Henderson could score for you. He literally can, and you don't have to switch backs. You can make quick calls. You can go no huddle. You just keep Henderson out there, and coaches love that. And you're saving yourself a second or two on the clock each play. When you have to turn over running backs, when they're running in and out, it slows you down. Why is Kyren Williams so good? You ever see him come out when the Rams push the ball?
No.
No.
And it also I don't want to say disguises, but it doesn't broadcast the play that you're going to run if you have to bring in the third down.
Excellent point, Rick. Excellent point.
Yeah, and coaches love that. So now I get the outcome. Trevion Henderson, I don't love his vision. I don't think it's spectacular, but I think it's NFL good enough, and I'd like to see him on a wide zone more. That in general, get him in the screen game, get him out on quick passes. But I think his ceiling is really high. Caleb Williams is kind of the X. I love him. Oh my God, is he big and strong? Physical. I'll tell you. But he needs to end up in a Shanahan scheme.
Yeah.
He needs a wide zone scheme. If you're giving me, like before Mike McCarthy was fired, but if you were giving me a Mike McCarthy 3 yards in a cloud of dust behind the center's buttocks.
A lot of 2-yard runs.
Yeah, that's a disaster. But if you tell me Caleb Johnson's going to go to San Francisco where Shanahan's going to scheme him up, one cut and go, young man, and he's 225 pounds.
Giddy
up. All in, right? I'm all in. But I love 225 at his size. Quinshon Judkins, man, I think he's just good at everything. I do. He's just a professional back. You guys remember Rodney Hampton? I know Rick looks around my age. We're a certain age. Quinshon Judkins, Rodney Hampton wasn't a great back for the Giants, but you know what? In Dan Reeves' system, the way they used him, he was just consistently a good professional,
good back. Mm-hmm.
Good back. That Quinshon Judkins is a good back. There's nothing teams like that. Here's the guy I want to get in the second round all day. I'm just hoping people don't like him as much as I do. Devin Neal, man. I'm sorry. I did not expect him to weigh 220. I thought he'd be like 205. I was worried from my Devy rankings. He was a little less on the Kansas. You know how they have the rosters. He was a little less. Maybe Kansas didn't update it or something. So it's kind of weird. Like, why was he so low on the Kansas website? He came to 220 at the Senior Bowl. He's 5'11". His BMI is 30.7. Guys, BMI, it's not there's no magic bullet. This will help maybe a little bit in the future. One of the questions. There's no magic bullet. No
but
one.
He was consistently good. Didn't he get all 3 years with 1,000 yards?
3 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Mm-hmm.
He has a 30% scrimmage yards dominator, 77 career receptions, and here's what I like, because I don't think people realize how strong he is. I love yards after contact per attempt by PFF. Now, if you've watched football like for 40 years like me, you know the tough backs. You just see them, right? They get hit, but they stay on their feet and they keep going. My benchmark is 3.25. Devin Neal has 3.73. That means every time he gets hit, he's gaining 3.7 yards. God, that's a nice meaty number. That is just now to give you an idea. Marion Hampton is 4.35. Caleb Johnson 4.43. He's in the ballpark with those bigger backs, and in general, a back who's bigger, more stronger, and those I think Johnson
more carries too, right? I mean, he's
yeah.
They're
just more dominant, different types of backs. I love him. Now, Ollie Gordon.
Good.
If he's in the third round, you have to go based on ceiling. You have to.
Last year.
2023, he was amazing. And context, everyone. This is why I love the film and watching college football, because you have to put everything in context. And sometimes when I listen to people, and hey, I've learned from the analytics guys. Trust me, I've learned, right? But if you just look at his numbers, you might say, guys, he was a star 2 years ago. And literally the Oklahoma State offense fell apart around him. They were god awful. When I mean awful, I'm talking historically bad. Well, what was happening? Ollie Gordon was literally facing 10 men in the box almost all the time. Also, I think Ollie Gordon was hurt, and when you watched him run, there was a difference. It looked like, but you don't have to say anything in college ball. And I do think when you have a very poor offensive line, quarterbacks don't like to get hit, and you can see when a quarterback gets gun shy. I'll say this. If the defense has penetration consistently, a running back gets gun shy. Right? They're lateral cutting too quickly. They're not waiting patiently for the hole to happen, right? Because every time I get a half a yard, I got a defensive tackle in my face or a linebacker coming off the edge. I think Gordon got gun shy at times because this offensive line was so bad. Like, it was bad, folks. So I think he's a home run if you get the opportunity in round 3. Love him.
And while he's going down, the person in your number 10 slot is rocketing upwards. So why don't you tell us a little bit about LaQuint Allen?
So LaQuint Allen, if you remember Sean Tucker coming out of Syracuse?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, he did have that little bit of a health problem, right? There was concerns about his heart. And I do think
heart.
Yeah, he had a big game with Tampa Bay one day this year, right? Didn't he have a big game, Sean Tucker?
Did, yeah.
Yeah, so he's their third back on a deep depth chart at Tampa Bay. But LaQuint Allen, 3 years ago, played the final game of the year for Syracuse. I think it was in the bowl game. And I had been scouting Tucker, and I was watching the bowl game. I'm like, oh, my God, this young man is so good. Who is this LaQuint Allen? I've had him on my college dynasty teams and on many college fantasy football teams over the last 2 years. He's 207. Now, he's a little thin because he's 6 feet tall. So he is a little thin on the buttocks, and his BMI is a little lower than I would like. It doesn't hit my 30 benchmark on the BMI. But here's what I love about him. He's really good in space. He's really good at catching. He has 119 career receptions. He has a role in the NFL, folks. At worst, he's a third down back. That is the worst case scenario. Do you guys remember Duke Johnson out of Miami coming out?
Definitely.
He's a little, I think he's a little bit of a Duke Johnson. And I don't know if Duke, he was with some bad Cleveland teams. I don't know if he ever had that.
With the Texans too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if ever really Duke was good. I think he had a couple seasons with nearly 50 catches or over 50 catches, but not the monster. I'll say this. I think LaQuaint Allen's better near the goal line than Duke Johnson. He has a role in the goal line. He's actually really good. If you watch a lot of Syracuse, he's good down there. I do like him. I have him at number 10. Landing spot's going to be very important. Like, let's just say, let's make a crazy thing. He ends up in Tampa Bay, where he might be third on the depth chart. That's not a good thing. It would be nice if he lands in a spot where a depth chart is available to him, but I think he's really good.
We had one quick question come in the chat from Greg Kellogg, and he asked about Caleb Johnson and his ability to pick up blitzes. So if you could just take a second to address that question.
I don't think it's great, but it's also the problem we have at Iowa, right? You cannot sit there and say that Iowa is a dominant pass team. I don't know how much they're coaching the running backs up. This is where, like, being outside doesn't – I'm not at the practices, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what the Hawkeyes emphasize on pass blocking. I don't think it's great on film, but the opportunities aren't there. He does have the size to pick up blitzes and stonewall people, but does he have the experience and the coaching to help him? I'm going to give him neutral. I don't think he's terrible, but I don't think he's Trevion Henderson, who he's literally seen stonewall people.
Okay, so we kind of touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the first and second tier players. But can you give us just a general breakdown of each of the depth of each position based on, like the past classes? Like last year we had the wide receivers. This year we got running back. So just give us a quick breakdown of how deep quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends are in this class.
Absolutely. Running backs, we've already said it.
Yep.
Unbelievable. I mean, I really think there might be 35 of these guys drafted at the end. And those who aren't drafted will immediately get UDFA contracts right out of the gate. So and we've talked a lot about it. I think the tight ends are the second best. We're going to talk about that pretty soon. Tight ends are loaded. And I think what we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years, if you look at the teams in the championship games in the Super Bowl, there's kind of a common thread.
Yes,
they all have tight ends.
I agree.
It's become you need to have a weapon at the tight end position. Now, I have to admit when I'm totally wrong. I was asked this question over the summer, and I thought the tight end class was weak. Oh my God. I mean, I was as wrong as you could humanly possibly be. This tight end class is phenomenal. I mean, now part of it is some of these young men just made massive leaps. I mean, incredible. I did not expect Tyler Warren just to set one of the best seasons. Harold Fannin to literally go bonkers. Like, I liked him, but I didn't think he'd do what he did. It is so deep right now. I like the wide receivers. What we were spoiled last year. Let's just admit that we were spoiled. You don't get Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and the kid in San Diego, Vlad McConkey.
Yep. All in one class.
I mean, and there's still players I like. Look at Xavier Worthy, right? Keon Coleman flash at times. We don't have that. Someone asked me about Ted McMillan. If he was in last year's class, he's my number 5 wide receiver. To me,
still pretty good.
He's behind Neighbors, Harrison, Brian Thomas, and Rome Odunze. And remember, what happened this year, Rome Odunze's rookie year has nothing to do with him as a prospect.
I agree.
I think one thing that people confuse, being a prospect is not the results. The results were not good last year for Rome Odunze. He had some flashes. Let's see what happens now with the Ben Johnson new coaching staff, second year with Caleb Williams. So I'm neutral on that. But that's where I'd have Ted McMillan. He would been number 5 in this class. Travis Hunter. I graded him as if he's a receiver full-time. Because we're a fantasy show, and I'm going to dream that he plays wide receiver. I get it that he might play corner. But for now, before the pre-draft process, and before we know where he lands or what the plans are for him, he's my second highest graded wide receiver. Now, let's just say the Giants took him. Let's just say that. If the Giants come out and say, we're going to line up Travis Hunter 60% on defense, and he's going to be our third receiver in three set formations and be on the offense 50% of the time, I would end up lowering Travis Hunter. So much of Travis Hunter is going to depend on outcome with him. But I have him graded as the second best receiver. I absolutely think he could be a marvelous receiver. And I'm talking like 1,200-yard upside with like double-digit touchdowns with the right quarterback in the right system. That's how good he is in my book. Love Emeka Egbuka. I just think he's great. I think he does everything well. I understand he only mostly played in the slot at Ohio State. I had this argument out 2 other players, and I don't know if he's going to turn out like those 2. When Amon-Ra St. Brown came out of USC, I was as high on, I had him at like number 5 in my rankings. There were people at Amon-Ra St. Brown outside the top 10. When he fell in the 4th round, I was like, oh my God. Like, what did people not see in this man? The knock on him was that he had played mostly in the slot at USC, which is true to an extent. But you've seen what he's done in Detroit. The other one is Drake London. Drake London, his first 2 years at USC, played in the slot. Then he moved out to the X, and he dominated his last year at the Coliseum for the Trojans. But there were lots of people who wondered about Drake London. Could he transition? Where was he an X or was he an inside? I said he's an X. He can play both. I think Emeka Egbuka is in that type of bucket. I don't think he's as good as he's not as fast as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown has that quick first step. Oh my God. He's just brilliant. Drake London's bigger, stronger. But Emeka Egbuka's I think he can play Z. He's going to be a big slot. If you need him on the X for a series, you can put him out on the X. I don't know if you want him there, 85% of the plays. I love Emeka Egbuka. My hardest evaluation this whole offseason has been Luther Burden. Who are you, young man? 2023, spectacular. Unbelievable. All SEC first team, All-American, totally rocked it. The film of his 2023 season, unfreaking believable. Last year, he pooped the bed. Now, context. Missouri fell apart. If you don't remember, wasn't Missouri like 11-2 at the regular season in 2023? They were incredible. Brady Cook, Luther Burden, that offense. They had a great running back. Everything, Cody Schrader, if you remember him, that offense was clicking on all cylinders. Last year, it looked like they were a JV offense in the Sun Belt. They were just beyond awful. Now, I think Brady Cook got hurt. They couldn't replace their running back. They never got the run game going. Burden totally fell off the map. Now, I have a second-round grade because I actually grade like over a period. I can't give him a first-round grade when he was that bad last year. If he gets first-round draft capital, then then he's the NFL feels good about him. If he falls to the second round, which I have a second-round grade, and if he falls outside the top half of the second round, that's real big red flags for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Real big red flags. I like him. There's no question. But I have to be honest, he doesn't look like the type of guy that we saw in 2023. So there's questions to be answered.
So, and we talked about this before the show started about my man love for Jack Beck. So, any thoughts on on Beck that you could share with us?
Now, if anyone doesn't know, Jack Beck started at LSU, but unfortunately, he had this little problem on the roster. They had Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, and they had a tight end named Mason Taylor. So Jack Beck ends up in this really, really bad situation where he's probably not going to get on the field. So he took his ability and he went to TCU. And Jack Beck totally popped this year. He smashed. He was great. He was great for the Horned Frogs. But the problem is I have him as a tweener. He's not a tight end. If you've seen Jack Beck, yeah, he's a bigger guy. He's a big wide receiver, but there's no way he has the buttocks for the tight end position. I mean, what do I got him at 212? Come on. We said this before. Jack Beck could move up to number 7, or he can move down to number 14 based on the combine. We've got to see how athletic he is. I think he's got the fortitude. I think he's a good football player. I love the tape. But what is his role in the NFL what is his role in the NFL going to be?
I just want to get this quick question here, John. Who would be the best wide receiver for New England at 38? I had to put that up because I'm a Patriots fan too. So
Matthew Golden.
Matthew Golden. There you go, Royal Slade.
Drake May needs a route runner. He needs a home run hitter. And Matthew Golden can fulfill those two things. I love Matthew Golden. So I have him at number, at 6? I had him at number 6. If he's there at 38, that's a nice pick for the New England Patriots.
Do you think that he's going to last that long? I've even heard rumors that the Dallas Cowboys would be looking at him at their spot. So
now I'll say this. If someone takes him in the top 15, man, they got power to you. I don't have that high of a grade. He didn't really pop. He was good as a freshman at Houston. He had a down year his second year, and he really didn't come through to the Longhorns until about the second half of the season. So we're looking at a really nice player who came on late. I don't have a top 15 grade. If Dallas picks him, then obviously I'm going to open up my eyes. Now, I think Dallas would like to get him in the second round. But I could be wrong. I do think if he's in the second round, he's off the board probably in the first 5 picks of the second round.
Makes sense.
All right, let's move on to the tight ends, John. Why don't you talk to us about Tyler Warren and then the next few after that?
Oh, I love Tyler Warren. I know critics will say he was a late bloomer. He came out of high school at 2020. Let me double check. So, yep, at 2020. He basically didn't do anything for 3 years at Penn State. But, guys, Penn State has a deep depth chart at the tight end position. And Ted Johnson, right? Was it? Yeah, Ted Johnson, the tight end who ended up with the Giants, right? He shared the tight end position with them in 2023. Tyler Warren finally got the job this year for Penn State full time. Guys, the numbers are silly. He had over 100 receptions. I believe it was 1,200 yards. I don't have the final stats in front of me. And I plugged him into my model. I was blown away at my model with Tyler Warren. 75% catch rate. Context. Drew Allar is not a superstar quarterback. 75% catch rate is phenomenal. Team aerial dominator. Penn State had really one player in the passing game. Everyone in the stadium knew you have to stop Tyler Warren. He had a 34% team dominator when everyone and their cousin and their grandmother told you we got to stop Tyler Warren, and guess what? They couldn't stop him. Receiving yards per team pass attempt. I'm looking at a baseline for tight end, 1.5. He has 2.82. That's silly. He almost doubles my benchmark. He played quarterback in high school. He made throws. He's out of the Wildcat. He completed passes last year. Here's what's going to happen. Tyler Warren is going to go to Combine, next weekend, right? It's like 10 days from now. He is going to hit a home run because all Penn State athletes do. Look at what Mike Gesicki did. Look at what Ted Johnson did. Look what Pat Fryermuth did. Look at what Saquon Barkley did. Look at what Miles, the guy on the Eagles this year. What is the running back from Penn State? Miles Sanders. All of them were athletic freaks at the Combine. Guess what Tyler Warren's going to do at the Combine? Be an athletic freak.
Athletic freak, yeah.
He's going to be. And we just mentioned it. It's a copy. Well, we mentioned the value of the tight end position. We know this is a copycat league. If Tyler Warren, everyone loves the film. I don't see, if you watch film, if I figured it out, I'm sure the NFL scouts and in the franchises have figured it out. If he goes out and he's an athletic freak, he's going to be a top 15 pick, if not a top 12 pick. Now, in fairness, I don't think he's as good as Brock Bowers as a prospect, but he's a damn good prospect. I would say if it was on a spectrum, not as good as Brock Bowers, but better than Sam Laporta. Is that a fair kind of? And we've seen how good Sam Laporta has been in the NFL. Colson Loveland. This is where football matters. If you put him in a model, guess what? You're going to think he stinks. There's no model that's going to like him. But here's the reality. He played with possibly the worst passing game you could ever imagine this year.
Yeah, you have to look at 23 to see him with McCarthy, yeah.
Yeah, and Michigan threw for 1,500 yards in 2025 as a blue blood program. They had 3 quarterbacks. How do you go into a season with 3 terrible quarterbacks and you're at the University of Michigan? That's why Harbaugh. Another reason Harbaugh left. He looked at that quarterback room. He's like, "Oh my God, I got to get out of here."
I know that we're also. I know we're running up against the clock, so I wanted to, if you could briefly touch on the next 3, because they're the ones I think a lot of people will be looking at, as they're looking for the tight end after the first 2.
The guy everyone loves, and he was too impressive at the Senior Bowl, Elijah Arroyo. I don't know why Miami didn't use him, folks. I don't get it. I don't understand. But my model likes him. He has a 78% catch rate. His PFF dot is 11. Tyler Warren is 6.9. Colson Loveland is 7.1.
Yeah.
Oh, he's 11. He's running deep routes on the field. He averaged 16.4 yards per catch.
And yet he's not like a Fannin, who's kind of more of a wide receiver type, or?
Yeah, I think Fannin is a H-back / tweener / he's not. Arroyo's 245.
Yeah,
and
he's decent size. Yeah.
Yeah, put him in the NFL weight room. Maybe get him to 250. I think he might go in the first round. I think the NFL loves Elijah Arroyo. I like him. I have a second round grade. Then I have Fannin. The numbers are too good. He's a good player. He's a good football player. He is undersized at 230. Sorry. At 230 for a tight end, you're just not going to be able to withstand those defensive ends or outside linebackers who are 270 pounds. You can't do it. So you got to put him in motion. You got to play him at H-back. Maybe you play him in the slot, right? You move him around, but he's a good football player. And I like Gunnar Helm, but I'm going to be very open-minded. Gunnar Helm and Mason Taylor are very close to each other. I need to see their athletic abilities, the two of them. I do prefer Gunnar Helm's blocking and what he put on tape as last year for the Longhorns.
Wow. And I'll be honest, we're so close on time, but there was one question, Joe.
Rick, don't worry about the time, man. We got John Laub.
A couple minutes, we're good.
So you want to give us a couple? No, you kind of answered that earlier. We'll skip that one. Who are some guys that are off the radar right now that we should be paying attention to?
So I'm going to go to running back. I'll give you one at running back and one at wide receiver. How's that?
Okay, that's good.
The guy who I really liked in college fantasy football, and when the season ended, I had to watch more tape. Brayshawn Tootin of Virginia Tech. He's really good, folks. He's really good. He's from the FCS level. So he only played 2 years for the Hokies. But anyone who saw the Hokies, the last year, he was basically the offense. He's 5'11", 211, a BMI of 29.4. He had a 27% scrimmage yards dominator. He averaged 4.4 yards after contact per attempt. That is a meaty number in the ACC. I know it's not the SEC or the Big Ten, but that's a really good number. Brayshawn Tootin is going under the radar. I would not be surprised if he's a late third-round pick. He's going to be early. I have a late third-round grade. Let's say that. He definitely will go early fourth round, and we know in the NFL, the fourth round, you can be a productive NFL running back. I love Tootin. I think he's being overlooked. At wide receiver, whoops, I just have to switch my screen. Sorry about that, everyone, because I want to make sure that I get the numbers right when I talk to you guys.
Yeah.
The wide receiver that I like a lot, and I don't know why people aren't talking about him, Kyle Williams at Washington State. My friends, I liked the tape, the games when I watched it. When I plugged in the numbers, I double-checked every number. I had to go, oh, my God. He was so much more productive than what my tape watching. Does that make – sometimes you watch the tape and you know a player's doing well, but then you plug in your numbers. I'm like, and I'll just give you a little taste of how good he is. Catch percentage, 71%. Washington State doesn't have an NFL quarterback, folks. John Mateer is an athlete who runs and then he throws when he has to. He had a 33% aerial dominator. Oh, now I got something here. His yards, his receiving yards per team pass attempt. Now, I was shocked by this. If you know Washington State, they do a lot of dink and dunk. It's one of those kind of horizontal passing games, right, where you get the ball out and then you hope the receiver. His receiving yards per team pass attempt was over 3. My benchmark is 2.5. They threw to him deep down the field, folks. Kyle Williams is 5'10", 182. 248 career receptions. Kyle Williams, man, I think he's going to go early in the fourth round. I think he can play outside and inside. I really like Kyle Williams. I don't know why no one's not talking about him. Watch the tape. He's a little older. I get it. But he's good, man.
Can I squeeze in 2 other running backs?
Yeah, of course.
Kyle Monaghy from Rutgers. Thoughts on him, comparing him maybe to Isaiah Pacheco, also from Rutgers?
So he's not as good as Isaiah Pacheco.
Okay.
He just isn't. Isaiah Pacheco was much better on the film. I have Monangai at number 21. It's only 209 pounds. He can't catch, at least I will say this. There's no catching on tape. Rutgers doesn't throw to their backs. I'm not saying he can't, but he doesn't have experience at it. I hope he gets 6th round draft capital.
Okay. Another name that comes up a lot is Dylan Sampson from Tennessee.
Oh, I have him at number 12. He's a little lighter than, so I'm a big back guy. So I'm biased. I'm not saying that small backs can't make it. So don't get me wrong. Now, I've heard and read he might have the fastest 40.
I was going to say
now,
super fast.
if that happens, I have him at number 12 right now. If he goes out and runs a 4.36, 4.34, I got to move him up to like number 9 because he is over 200 pounds. And I do like him. Now it's a heavy draft. It's a good draft class, right? He might have been number 5 last year. He might have been number 3 last year. I might have had him over Jalen Wright last year. And I like Jalen Wright. But I need to see how fast he actually is. But he's one of the guys I do like him. He's my number 12 before the combine.
All right. So all right, we'll get to that question I wanted to ask now.
Oh, good.
Can you explain to us how your model helps project a player's success at the NFL level? I'm interested to learn a little bit more about that process.
That's a great question, because when I started 12 years ago, I would just look more at raw numbers, right? You like Kenneth Davis. Remember, I love Kenneth Davis. He was so good from the numbers, and I like the film. But I've learned after 12 years, like studying film, not just as a fan, but trying to break it down, trying to learn how to look at film. But my model, I got this from teaching, actually. And it's one of the, I think it's important in life to take skills you learned in one career or one thing and apply them in others when they are appropriate. That's underrated. I think we don't tell young people that. If you learn how to do something, you gain skills that you can take to other fields. One of the things that I learned is we used to have more standardized tests. And you didn't have to score the highest on the test, but you had to have a certain level of proficiency. Does that make sense? So what did I do? As I started looking at these more advanced metrics and more people look at metrics, I said, there is no magic bullet. I got over that long time ago. There's no such thing as one stat is guarantee NFL success. That's just not true. So I said, well, I need to look at a bunch of advanced stats and create benchmarks like I did for students in school. And are they proficient? I'm looking for a certain level of proficiency. And I'm not necessarily saying if you're way above it or this much above it. As long as you're above it, you have a certain baseline of skills that should apply to the NFL. So I've already alluded to it. Yards per contact per attempt. Yards after contact per attempt. That's a really good stat. But here's where context and experience matters. Ashton Jeanty has the highest number in the class, 5.25. But Marion Hampton has 4.35. But what's the difference? The level of competition. I cannot say unequivocally that a Marion Hampton's 4.35 playing in the ACC is really worse than Ashton Jeanty's 5.25 playing in the Mountain West. Because here's the reality. Clemson has boys who can play linebacker and safety. The teams in the ACC have boys who are going to play in the NFL. North Carolina State can hit. The reality is the Mountain West doesn't have a lot of linebackers. But the reality is Jeanty and Hampton both cleared the benchmark. But because of the level of competition and my experience watching the film and looking at numbers, I understand that, yes, they're much closer than the number indicates. But if people just look at the raw number, they might say, oh, Ashton Jeanty destroys him. Let's look at Caleb Johnson, 4.42. Guys, Iowa's playing the Big Ten schedule. They can't throw the ball. He had 4.42 yards per after contact in the Big Ten?
Against stacked boxes, yep.
What?
And against stacked boxes, too.
Against stacked boxes. Completely. Mm-hmm. So is Caleb Johnson really that much less of a prospect than Ashton Jeanty when you put it into context? No, he's not. Now, I've also learned that receiving numbers, I don't think there's a big difference between 90 career receptions and 50 career receptions. They're in the same bucket. As long as I watch the tape and I believe that you are a proficient pass catcher. Now, there are players like Saquon Barkley and Najee Harris where you actually see them running out routes in college. You're like, oh my God. I mean, Barkley's running 20 yards down the field in college. Najee Harris, you can see film of him 20 yards down the field. Jahmyr Gibbs, literally running seam routes 30 yards down the field at Alabama. When I see that, oh my God, I don't care how many catches they have. But I want to see a baseline of proficiency, right? If you have 50 career receptions, the offense believes in you. They put you in the passing game. You remain on the field. And then let me see if you're special, like Barkley, Gibbs, and Harris, or are you just good? There's nothing wrong with being good, right? So that's where film context matter. But if you hit my baseline, I know you can be a pass catcher at the NFL level. So look at, I'm sure you guys have seen this, maybe not. Woody Marks, USC. He has 261 career receptions. Okay, let's just stop the nonsense. He's not the greatest running back who ever caught passes. He played for Mike Leach. And anyone who knows Mike Leach, a catch is basically a handoff. So what happened his first couple of years when he was playing for Mike Leach, he had silly numbers as a receiver. I think he had 80 receptions one year. I like Woody Marks. I think Woody Marks is obviously a proficient running back in the passing game. But he's not that much better per se than Ashton Genty with 77 and Marks has 261. So context matters. Both men hit the number. Then my job is to watch the film, make an assessment of their pass catching ability. Then my job is to put it into context. What type of offense? Caleb Johnson, 29 receptions. You want to know something? In an Iowa offense, 29 receptions isn't that bad. But I can't tell you. I don't have anything on tape of Najee Harris, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, where literally Iowa's running him down the seam and he's beating safeties and linebackers 25 yards down the field. Does that help you a little bit understand?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Yeah, because context does matter. So, yeah.
Yeah, so here's another context. If you look, Trevion Henderson had a low scrimmage yards dominator. Hello. He sheared the backfield. So if you know Ohio State sheared the backfield, he's not going to be up there. Now, Caleb Johnson, 40% scrimmage yards dominator is unbelievable. But let's put in context.
He was the
Iowa
only
had
running back.
nothing else. Like literally. So you learn when you watch the games and you know the offense and the coaches and the systems, why certain numbers are so high, why they might be low. And those help you, but they all hit the benchmark. Does that make, and I like
Absolutely,
scrimmage
yeah.
yards. I like scrimmage yards dominator because that means the coaching staff believes in you. You've been productive with the ball over a large period of touches. And you should be able to handle a bigger workload at the NFL level. Those things all matter. Now, let me give you one more, and then how about one more interesting one that I like for quarterbacks? And then we'll end the show. I'm having too much fun. So, context. Touchdown to let me go to games played. I've been arguing for 7 years that number of games played matter. It's nice to see people come around to my side. And here's why. As an educator, I have seen kids grow from 14 to young men at 18. And if you think a 14-year-old kid is the same as he is when he graduates 18, you just never had a teenager. Young men are the same way. If you think an 18-year-old man who walks onto college campus is the same as a 22 or 23-year-old young man who leaves, you're just not paying any attention. So why do I mention this? Growth takes place. Sometimes you don't get growth, but growth can take place. I like games played because I've seen it with my high school kids. I do one oral report every marking period with my sophomores. They're 15-year-old kids. When you do it in October, you want to cut your eyeballs off. They're so bad. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe what I just saw. That was awful. When they do their 5th oral report for their final exam in June, some of them are unbelievable. Why is that? It's growth. What does games played tell me? If the young man had over 30 career games, that means he read 30 game plans. That means he was in the locker room with young men and he had to lead them out on the field. That probably means he got hit a lot. That means he lost games and he won games. He overcame adversity. He learned how to deal with the mental acumen of staying in the game down by 14. How do you remain positive? How do you read the defense? What are the adjustments at halftime? Guys, all these things matter. All these things matter. I didn't have a share of Trey Lance. I don't have a share of Anthony Richardson. If a young man has under 20 career starts in college, I am 100% out. Never had them. I'm sorry. Games played matter. Now, last year was a little weird because we had players who played for 5 or 6 years in college. But you know what? They learned how to play quarterback. Why did I have so much Jalen Hurts? His games played. He was unbelievable. I don't care. There was so much nonsense around Jalen Hurts, and I just scooped them up in 4 dynasty leagues in round 3. I'm like, are you guys nuts? People thought I was crazy. I had him as the number 3 ranked quarterback in the class. I have tons of Dak Prescott. And I don't care what you think of Dak Prescott. Now, guys, he wasn't, I won't say the name. National media expert did not have Dak Prescott in his top 10. I had him at number 4. Just to give you an idea, a quarterback from Penn State named Christian Hackenberg was drafted by the Jets before Dak Prescott. If you don't know, Christian Hackenberg never started a game in the NFL. I thought I was crazy. I'm like, what is wrong with these? Am I just stone cold nuts? But part of it was my model said he played a lot of college football. And if you watch Dak Prescott, he got his ass kicked against Alabama, LSU. He went to Mississippi State, folks. He played a lot of games in college. He took a beating and he learned how to be a quarterback. Trey Lance never went through adversity. He stepped into a golden situation at North Dakota State, coming off national championships. He was given everything on a silver platter. And everyone told him he was God. He didn't get on the field. The Cowboys didn't play. I was like, what? He must be so bad the Cowboys even put him on the field this year. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
People were drafting him at the second pick of the Superflex.
Yeah. And he was going against Cooper Rush at that point. So
that's unbelievable, Rick. Yeah. All you have to know is that. That's all you have to know. Games played matter. Again, I don't think there's a big difference if you played 37 games or 47 games. If you hit the 30 benchmark, to me, you've learned the adversity and the complexity of the game. And that matters. And I learned it from my own students. And then when I dug into the numbers, guess what started to pop up? Guys, do you remember Achilles Smith?
Yes.
Went to the Bengals. I think he played 1 year, like 13 games. Guys, why did and this is what I'm so mad at. Hey, I'll tell you mistakes I made. I should have had Brock Purdy higher. I think he played over 40 games at Iowa State. I think I had him at number 10, and my model said he was pretty good. But no one talked. I was like, he looks up. No one likes him. There was no national media, no discussion. And he went the last pick of the draft. But you know what? I have Brock Purdy on my 3 dynasty teams. I only have 3 left. I used to have more, but I have 3 left. Because you know why I got Brock Purdy? Because he was on the waiver wire in every dynasty league. And you know what I said? I looked in my model and I said, I think Brock Purdy's better than I gave him credit for. And bam, he's been one of, I'm so happy with my Brock Purdy shares. He led me to a championship last year because I pounced on it. And I've heard dynasty managers that he went on, even when he popped that first year at San Francisco, there were dynasty leagues where they didn't believe and no one picked him up off the waiver wire. I'm greedy. Any quarterback has a game in a dynasty waiver wire, guess what? I'm picking him up. I'm picking him up because we can be wrong, right? There's always a chance that I was wrong. There was one question I saw. I didn't see the flash up question. What was it?
Who was your sleeper quarterback this year?
It was about who would you say is your sleeper quarterback that you would be picking this draft?
I'm going to take him in the 5th round of every draft, Dillon Gabriel. He's going to start games in the NFL. Look at my model. Loves Dillon Gabriel. He had the best arm strength at the Senior Bowl. You're going to hear this all the time. He's too small. He's 5'11". He's 5'11". He's my number 4, right? Yeah, I have him at number 4. I'm way higher on him than everyone else. And if I'm going to get a starting quarterback in round 5, I'm going to take him in every league. Because here's the reality. Once he's in the NFL locker room, once the coaches start talking to him, once he starts absorbing the playbook, he's going to get a shot on the NFL field. And if you watch Drew Brees, obviously he's Hall of Famer. I'm not saying he's Drew Brees. That's not what I'm saying. But Drew Brees had one skill set that I always said was amazing. He can find windows in the pocket and pass through those windows.
Watch his size, he kind of needed to because
he was undersized.
So he had to look for passing lanes.
Dillon Gabriel does that. And he's not Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is afraid to throw the ball 10 yards in the middle of the field. He doesn't see it. Dillon Gabriel sees it.
In fact, Wilson always had to get out of the pocket to be able to. Yep.
Yes. Dillon Gabriel gets out of the pocket when he has to because the pass rushers or sometimes the play breaks down.
Sure.
He throws well on the run and he finds passing. He is going to start games in the NFL. There's no question in my mind. Now, you might have to wait a year, but that's okay. He's better than Spencer Rattler. And what did Spencer Rattler start? 4 or 5 games this year for the Saints? He's better than Aiden O'Connell. I mean, we had some real bad quarterbacks this year, folks.
Aiden O'Connell, definitely.
The bottom. It's terrible. The NFL quarterbacks at the bottom of the list are bad. So
yes, as long as he lands in a spot where there might be opportunity to get on, like if he ends up behind Josh Allen, okay,
no chance.
I mean, that's just. I'll wait to free agent, right? Like that's just he's not getting on the field.
But maybe Miami.
What if he's behind Tua for a year or two? And I'll tell you this, he's better than what Miami trotted out last year when Tua was injured.
Yeah.
I actually think he'd be really good in Miami because he can find Jaden Waddle. And if Tyreek Hill comes back, those passes in the middle of the field that Tua is so good at. Dillon Gabriel can find that. I do like Dillon Gabriel. I'm going to get him everywhere. As long as the spot is, I can see a path to success. Like if he's behind Joe Burrow, like, okay, whatever. Yeah. Ironically, that might not be so bad because Burrow can get hurt. So maybe I would take him there. Who knows?
Well, I better draw us to a close because they're probably going to come out and turn off the lights in a second or two. But again, thank you very much. I mean, we were so excited to have you, and you delivered great content, great insights, and great energy that helped make this information, this hour and some odd, just enjoyable. So want to thank you. But would you tell us where people can find you, where you can find their content and your Twitter, and how people can find you?
Excellent. I'm on Twitter at Gridiron Skull 91. I couldn't afford the A and the R when I signed up 14 years ago. So it's Gridiron Skull 91. I'm also on Blue Sky, Gridiron Scholar 91, just on Blue Sky. Now, my written work is on Player Profiler. Right now, you can see my quarterbacks. You can see my part 1 of the running backs. Monday, my part 1 receivers are coming out. That's the scouting report and the skills. I do 2 in the written, the resume, and then the scouting report, what I saw on tape. Also, there's links to all my models. I was talking about a gentleman in every article that I come out with. There's a link right now. You can see all my top. I think I have 14 quarterbacks in the model. It goes back. You can see other quarterbacks in other years in the model. So you can see how they're doing. The running backs, I think I have 32 running backs right now in my model. I have 41 wide receivers I have right now in my model. but you can see the model that I've been talking about, how I look at players, what my benchmarks are. You can check all of that out. It's on Player Profiler. Then I think you mentioned the Rookie Big Board. Our Matt Hicks and I'm very privileged to work for with Matt Hicks for the 6th year. We're doing our rookie profiles. Each show's about 12 minutes, and we break down the tapes, the analytics, and we look at the fantasy value, what we're projecting at this point.
Well, awesome. And we are not worthy, but we appreciate you being on our show.
Excellent info, John. 100%, man. I was so happy when Rick said I booked John Laub. I was like, that's
thank you, Jeff. I had a blast. Thank you, Rick, for reaching out to me. I really appreciate that.
Awesome.
Great,
and hopefully
great,
we'll be able to
great
get you
timing.
back,
Yeah,
I know that you evolve, you change your rankings during the course of time and after the combine, of course, and as we get closer to the actual draft. But I want to also thank people for being on and watching the show and being on the chat. Join Joe and I next Thursday at our regular time, 7 p.m. Eastern, when our guest is going to be Wyatt Bertoloni, who's with JWB Fantasy Football. He's one of the sharpest analysts and rankers. He's also very involved with ranking for Scott Fishbowl. So you'll definitely want to be here for that. And then also want to remind you to keep your eyes on the Sports Affiliation YouTube channel. On Sundays, look for the TSA Hoop Show with JR. Tuesdays, the Give Back show that I get to host. And then Carla's interview show, The Game Changers, on Wednesdays. And then, of course, coming back, hopefully you come back again for us next Thursday. So again, thanks, John, for being here. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And JC, why don't you go ahead and take us out?